Welcome everybody to another edition of the Director's Garage Live. I am your host and, resident idiot, sporting some calderas today. Check this out. This is a pretty good deal right here. Man, I got to talk about these today a little bit, I think. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Director's in the middle of a major move. This part of the room is the only part that's normal. Everything else is completely disgusting. It's loaded with boxes and all kinds of stuff, and I've had some interesting things happen. I have a bunch of storage areas around the house. There's one that's kind of like a basement area that's sort of cut into it's like on the front part of the property. And that's where I store all my boxes for like my amps and, like the stuff I might sell someday. That part was fine. I pulled all that out. It's all ready to ship, ready to send to the new place, all of that. The hard part is the back end of the house where there's an underground storage sort of area. And the problem there is we had a ton of rain over the winter. Now, for 15 years, that area of the house stayed completely dry. Like, I never saw a drop of moisture in it. But last year, we got unprecedented rain. I mean, like deluge in California, like crazy, like catastrophic 100-year rains or something. Like it's been 40 years since they saw rains this big in the state. And the soil that goes into this crawl space got a little wet. So I didn't know this, and that was, 3 months ago or something. So I'm going in to pull out all of the old boxes. Now, under there lived like old SD broadcast gear, tapes, DVDs, boxes of old cables, a couple of old Macintoshes in there, and some towers and G3 tower, G5 tower, a bunch of stuff like that. Those boxes, boys, were disgusting. They were epic. There was mold growing all over. It's like because the cardboard became food for mold. So it just like, it went around those boxes. So if you try to even pick one up, there's, they're like loaded with remember S-Video? The S-Video connector cable, like cables like that, and SD BNC cables for running my broadcast gear, which was all RGB. Back then, you used to break the picture signal down into colors. You didn't have one HDMI to go, or an SDI that sent digital signals. Everything was analog, and we liked it. Anyway. So funny. So I had to do a lot of reboxing of the stuff in there and cleaning it with Clorox, and then throwing the boxes out in the like it was so toxic. I'm surprised I don't have like blue cheese growing out of my ears, or do I? So that's kind of like, that's what I've been doing. I've been pulling out all of this old stuff, throwing a lot of it out, to be fair. And I threw out all of my old broadcast tapes. Like I went back to, I have stuff from 40 years ago. Like it would have been the 80s, right? So I have like beta tape and 1-inch tape that we used to put on in these huge heavy machines. And I had the machines too to run all this stuff. But who wants old SD video of, there was like a concert rehearsal, Bruce Hornsby concert rehearsal, Keith Richards, stuff that's kind of cool, but I can't put it on YouTube because of copyright. I don't own the copyright. This would have been my old station that I worked at, WTTW in Chicago. They own the copyright to it, so I couldn't put it out there for you guys or anything. There's nothing I can do with it. And it's old VHS. I mean, it's going to look like hell. compared to what we're used to now, because we've been HD for 15 years. So that's that's kind of where I was. I was like pulling out all this stuff and whatever, and I wound up throwing. I mean, I had a huge flatbed truck come by, and I filled 3/4 of it with crap from the basement and I threw out all the decks. These things are, is their value? Well, I might be able to get $25 for something. Stuff is listed for like $100, $200, $300 on eBay, but that's what they're listed for. That's not what they're selling for. Remember, there's a difference between, hey, these guys are all asking like $300 for their DV Cam SP broadcast decks. Yeah. Well, guess what? Nobody's paying that for them because there's no use for these anymore. So literally stuff that I probably had $50,000 when I purchased the stuff of all of this gear. I used it for editing. I was making money on it. I don't have any reservations. Like I didn't get my money out of it or anything. It's just that it's a shame to see all of this legacy stuff. I mean, and I went to the studios. I asked the studios, you guys interested in this stuff because I'll give it to you for free. Nope, don't care, throw it out. We have no use for it. We don't want any of this old stuff. There's no use for it. So all of this stuff, I threw out over 1,000 pounds worth of stuff. I threw out 2 Macintosh computers. I mean, they dated back to like 1998 and 2000 or so. Like it was like that. It was, I mean, in 2002, I had like a G5. And when I remember the G5 was the original water-cooled processor. When the rumor came out that Apple was going to release a G5 processor that was water-cooled, everybody thought it was a prank. They thought it was like an April Fool's joke or something. Because nobody's going to water-cool a processor. You're like, what are you going to put water in the middle of all this electronics? That's so stupid. But yet they did. And it was the trend, Then you got the beautiful tubes of like colored stuff going into those gaming machines. They're really impressive. But yeah, so that was. But I had one of those computers, and you look on eBay. What's a G5 selling for? $100. Guess how much it's going to cost me to ship it? $100, because the thing weighs a ton. Sorry, I gotta just look at 2 things real quick. This is work chiming in. They want to know if I'll bring a live view tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to the Brady house, boys. I'm going to the Brady house. The Brady, where they shot the exteriors for the Brady Bunch. Well, that show was that house sat. It was like a regular house in my neighborhood, and it sold. A couple of times, and then a couple of years ago somebody bought it, and it was bought by HGTV, and they had the actual Brady kids come together, and they did a season on HGTV where all the Brady kids, the originals, went in and they did a rehab on this house. So I'm going to shoot that tomorrow because it's up for sale for $5 million. If you got $5 million, you can move into the Brady house. Just saying. I know we all do. So let me talk about a couple of things though. So I want to talk about some things I found. Sorry, I'm like doing 3 things at once. So one of them was I'm going to try and pull this out. Oh, I got to remember how to do it. My original iPhone. This is an iPhone 3. An iPhone 3, not even the 3GS, no, and this thing sported a whole, 2 megabytes? 8 gigabytes, wow. So this was fancy. But here's my and so I found this thing and it plugged it in, and look, it works. It works fine. But check out, here's my current iPhone. And my question to you is, what the hell happened? How did we get this big? How did we go from a nice little thing that fit in your pocket and you could make calls on it to this massive thing that doesn't fit anywhere? Like it fits in a back pocket, and then you got to hope you don't sit on it. What happened? And just to show you guys how old, check this out. This is how old this thing is. Back when I had this, I just looked at the camera roll just before I went on the air, and your director had hair at one point, boys. Your director had hair. I also found this. This wouldn't even pair with it. But remember these? Remember these things? These are these little ear things. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Welcome to 2003, baby. And let's make a call. This thing's out of power. It doesn't work, and it won't pair. I don't even have it paired with anything. But you know, there you go. Crazy, crazy. I got to type one thing, and then we're gonna get into the chat. But do you believe that? What happened? Why did we go so much bigger? Why is suddenly this not acceptable anymore? This was nice. This was nice. This fit in your pocket. Up the resolution on this, Apple. Give me this option. Well, they can't charge you $1,000 for something this small. That's the problem. All right. Hang on 2 seconds. I'll ask Eric because it was ordered. And then we're going to go to Eric and say, Eric, doesn't see the... What was it? It's a movie I'm talking about. Sorry, boys. This is this business. Did business. I got to cover some business so I can do the play stuff on the air. Oh, here's Sean. Okay. You hurt my feelings. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, so that was one of the this is probably the coolest find of everything that I've found, because it still works. I mean, is it amazing that this thing's what? This would have been like, I don't know, 2003, maybe 2004? I don't know. But it still holds. It still holds. It doesn't, it's not connected to a network, but it still, you know, powers up. It'll probably play music or something. Oh, it's warning me that there's less than 20% battery life left. Well, let's get that plugged in because we can't live without this. But that was fun. That was fun to see that and to think of how far we've come. I mean, it's slow. I was like just paging through things. It's like, yeah, it's not smooth. Nothing goes across, you know, like when you swipe, nothing swipes smoothly, boys. It's very, very like it doesn't, it goes, you know, it's reasonable, but you can see like jerks in the imaging and like when it transitions stuff. But you know, 2003, I'm just like, but I'm like, why do I need this when I had that? You know, I'm kind of asking that as I'm downsizing and throwing stuff out. You know, maybe that's what triggered it. Maybe that's what brought it in. So that's like story one. That's like my lead is that and then aside from that is the next episode, which I was hoping to have out the door today, but I got really busy with work early in the week and packing, and I am one sore hombre. Like, oh my God. The arms are ready to fall off my body. My back's killing me. I've been under the house. I've been, you know, it's been nasty. So I haven't had that much editing time, maybe an hour a day. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through this edit. I'm doing all video stuff now. Just kind of spicing it up, making it tasty and pretty, and then I'll get it out the door to you guys. I don't know if I'll get it tomorrow, but probably Friday. It'll be out this week, but that's going to be the D8000 review, and then we're, you know, really I don't know if I'm going to get another episode done. Certainly we're going to be off next week for the live stream. We won't have a live stream next week because I'm going to be moving on that day. That's like my closing day. That's the closing day on this house. And then the next day is the closing day on the other house, on the new house. And then we move thereafter. It's going to take me a couple of days just to get things in place, obviously, and get all this stuff wired back up again. There's wires, you know, I got to put all of these little sources back here. That's all stuff. That's a wire has to go somewhere and tell that thing what to put in what box. So that's a lot of wiring. Well, let's make that better. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do there. So so excited you guys could join me today on a Wednesday. We're a little earlier in our normal get together, but cheers everybody. Cheers. Let's have a drink to Wednesday. Working the ice water per usual, and excited to be here. Oh, I also found some of these. These are some old video cards and stuff. This ran a Mark of the Unicorn, like a multi-track ingest. If you wanted to record like 3 or 4 or 5 microphones at a time, you're trying to get a band to play, you could play it all in at once. Or if you were doing a transfer off of multi-track tape, this card would allow you to hook up a box that would take in all 8 tracks simultaneously, and then you could edit them in Pro Tools or wherever it is you want to edit them. So I found that I pulled out of the G5 because I used to do stuff like that. Isn't that crazy? So yes, there we go. And let's get back here. Let's start jumping into the chat. First of all, I'm glad I made it on time. I really was like, I got work to do, you know. Just couldn't make it. Oh, I wanted to talk about the Caldera. We'll talk about him a little bit later. We got time. We got time, boys. We got time. All right. Gil Renard. Hey, cheers, buddy. Cheers. Hola. Afternoon, Ken Workshop. Ken Cass, good to see you. What'd you retract, Ken? Come back with it. Come back with it. So good. Anthony Berryman. How you doing? He says Zeos has done 5 videos on his trip to Munich. Some fantastic looking stuff at the show, some serious prices at that show. They better, and they had some great looking reel-to-reel at the show. Yes, those reel-to-reels from Germany are all in the well over 20,000 range, and they go up to 100,000. Some of those decks. I'm a connoisseur, so I looked. Yeah, they're way out of the director's price range. That's nothing I could do. I actually am like leaning more toward. I would love to get an old Studer deck that's still in great condition, because those were like, that was the I don't know, the Mercedes, you know, as far as engineering. Those were so good. And it rehabbed, and they work just perfectly. They're beautiful machines. Beautiful machines. So anyway, sorry, that was Josephine. I just came in. She's our housekeeper, and lovely lady. Hi, Josephine. Just walking. Yes, I saw, and Zeo showed his face for the first time ever, which I was grateful for, because that whole thing on the head just is really hard to take. It's really hard to take. So. So I was really glad we finally put a face to him, and well, I've seen him at shows, but I didn't want to say anything, you know. You can figure out who's who, you know. It's not that big of a mystery. But I was glad to see he did some episodes where the thing isn't on his head and I'm not getting nausea. So that was nice to see. Afternoon, gents, says Kevin Jacques. Hipster how's clearing out the old tech? Clearing out the old tech? Yeah, tons of old tech. Tons of old tech went in a trash dumpster. I threw out boxes, big, huge, like this big boxes. Probably 5 of them loaded with VHS and old. The only thing I saved were like some old cassettes. I saved because I still have a cassette player, and I saved. I saved some Blu-rays because I have a Blu-ray player. But the DVDs, no. I had boxes, boys, of DVDs, huge boxes of movies and box sets. I had like all of the HBO series on box DVD sets, because I would go and revisit like Band of Brothers every couple of years or whatever. Now it's like, well, you just put it up on the thing and watch it. It's like, there's no mystery. There's no like, these are DVD quality. Yeah, well, so what? You can stream in 4K. So, get out of my life. So, it's a shame. The throwing out of stuff and realizing how much I spent on stuff is like, what was I doing? I could have put all that money, could have bought a Ferrari. I'd still have it. Yeah, Back to the Future. Hey, boys. You want to go to the mall? Too much. Spring Hill Mall, boys. Spring Hill Mall. Back to the Future. Okay. Erico Pontus says, hey, Michael, went to Munich, got a listen to the Piazzolla live in Lugano on a Harmonia. Piazzolla. So I'm guessing that's a reel-to-reel, because Harmonia is the Harmonia Records. But that was This is one of those things you would tell somebody and go, you know, like as like a joke, like it's got so many things in it that I don't know. Listen to the reel. Yeah, it's a reel. On an HD-100S, it was an out-of-body experience. Well, those reel-to-reels, and I have the Hermolia Records kind of blue, thanks to my buddies in Germany, my buddy in Germany who sent it to me. But it's fabulous. It's just amazing. Nephilim, hi guys, Nephilim, good to see you, buddy. Kevin Jock says, curious to see if you think Caldera is good enough for me to sell my Radiance. I didn't care for the Radiance that much. LCD-X00 that's a better headphone, I think, and a tube amp plus a bit of cash to get it. The LCD-X is a pretty good headphone, though. That's like, I didn't like the Radiance. The Radiance was nasally to me. And bright. I didn't care for it. And that's fine. You know, I'm sure there are people out there that think I'm nuts, but I didn't care for it. But it gave me a great episode. I really did. I actually enjoyed watching that, doing that episode. It was a fun episode to do. But I think that the Caldera is one of the best headphones on the market. And if you're like looking at a Susvara or an LCD, a Susvara, an LCD-5, or an Abyss 1266 TC, this is a better deal. This is a better deal. This performs on a par or... I have a story about these. I was listening to... I had the X9000 fired up on the Alphabet amp, and I was playing Oasis. I got into this Oasis thing. I wanted to go back. I tripped across a video of Noel talking about What's the Story, Morning Glory, and the monumental work that it was. And it was a monumental work. It was so impressive. And so I'm like, well, I've got it, you know, I've got a few versions of it that have been mastered over the years, but, and I went back to it and I played it back on the X9000, and the X9000, it was bright. It was really bright. I'm like, it was bright and it was loud and it was not a pleasant tone. It wasn't a good tone. And so then I switched to the Carbon. And the Carbon was better for that genre, for that song, or for those songs. But it wasn't good. It wasn't like... It's not how I remembered the music. It's not how I remembered it. I remembered it different. I remembered it was richer or something. And eventually I wound up on the Caldera with it because the Caldera sounded so beautiful. And it just handles like stuff that's, you know, like kind of out of whack from a mix standpoint. And there's a reason for that. I got in another discussion with somebody a few hours ago. We were going back and forth in one of the chats on one of the videos, probably the Caldera video. But we were going back and forth, and he said, God, those 90s mixes generally got really crappy at some point. And I said, you know, my theory behind that is this. A lot of those 90s, if you remember, in the 90s, people started to be able to mix on their own and mix from home. That was the audio revolution that preceded the video revolution. And then in the 90s, you couldn't edit easily at home. There was no, like, you needed a professional if you were going to do serious editing. There were some other systems out there, but they weren't doing anything advanced. It was very rudimentary. The video revolution came in the early to mid 2000s with the advent of like Final Cut Pro, when Final Cut Pro started to take hold and it became something that everybody could use. And then everybody jumped in and said, I'm an editor. It diluted the market. I was out of the business by then, for at least as a main gig. But the audio, the same thing happened in audio years before, because in the 90s, 8-track decks, tape decks, became accessible to nearly everybody. And in the right hands, they produced an album like Jagged Little Pill from Alanis Morissette, which is a beautiful sounding record. Sounds great, even all these years later. It's a nice sounding record. And that was all done on ADAT. That entire album was recorded on ADAT, which ADAT used SVHS tape. It was the same form factor as your standard VHS tape from the 80s, except it had a little higher quality mechanism and a little higher quality tape inside. And that's what you could record 8 digital tracks on ADAT and bounce them around as many times as you want because it was all digital. Everything stayed digital. There was no restriction. It was a professional 8-track digital deck. And in the right hands, you could get great recordings out of it. But the problem is everybody thought, oh, I can do this at home and I can buy this stuff for myself and I can have my friend or the drummer from the band or whoever it was mix it, and I don't need to pay this expensive mixing engineer, mastering engineer to do this when we can do it ourselves now. There's no point in having this. But they don't, those guys didn't have the ears of a good mastering engineer. And a lot of stuff came out. It was really the first step in the loudness wars. And it was the first time things really started to sound thin. A lot of the 90s mixing came out thin. And you could tell the bands that were really hooked up and the bands that weren't. Black Crowes, excellent recordings. Oasis, they were okay. They weren't great. A lot of the grunge bands, they didn't care. They just wanted it to be loud. They didn't really care what it sounded like. The quality of it, who cares? We want to be loud. And so they were mixed really loud. And Oasis even said their engineers were instructed. They wanted the loudest recordings. They produced the loudest recordings. And that was, you know, very important in the mix, but it's not so good when it comes to fidelity and listening, because you want nuance. You want stuff to have highs and lows. You don't want it to be completely against the compressor all the way, jamming out everything, because even this quietest stuff sounds loud. And that's what compressors, everybody put compressors on everything in the 90s, and it was horrible. It came out bad. You know, there's a place for compression. You want to have an ease on the compression so it doesn't take everything and max out the volume on it. But that's where the loudness wars started. So, you know, that's why there was a roundabout way of getting to the Caldera. The Caldera was able to sort of handle that better than the E-Stats and some of the other headphones I was going through that day. And I finally got to these and I'm like, okay, that sounds more like I remember Oasis. But still, that's a whole catalog that could use an entire remix, in my opinion, you know. Okay. Eric Pontus says, dangerous rabbit hole. The listening took me back in time to his live concerts in the 80s. Well, and some of us don't remember those concerts so well. Now, I remember Van Halen coming into Southern Illinois, and it was with the Sammy Hagar tours. The first one was Sammy Hagar. They just released 5150, and they had to consult the structural engineer of our arena to see if it could hold the weight of their lighting truss. That's what I remember, the story I remember from Van Halen. But my ears rang for 3 days after that. It was the start of my tinnitus, I think. Okay. Hi, Michael. This is Jacob from Israel. He's very satisfied with his Empyrean. Yes. There's no reason not to be. It's a great headphone. I think that it's just a wonderful winning sound with great bass. My only complaint about the Empyrean was that it wasn't fast enough, and that's why the Elite came to be. The Elite came to be to solve some of those speed issues, some of those technical issues. But overall, from a sound standpoint, yeah, I took the Empyrean all over the place with me. I used to love to travel with it because it was such a relaxing, enjoyable headphone to listen to. Such a good headphone. Mr. Dynamite! Explosions. Cheers, boys. Gotta get some agua in me. Good evening. What's your new room gonna look like? Bigger? Smaller? Do you have any interesting ideas for equipment layout? By the way, love your channel, brother. Well, let me tell you, it's gonna be a bigger room. I've got more room to play. I've kind of got some ideas. I'm going to next weekend pick up some really large edit desks these are edit desks from, we were talking about at the beginning of the show, about 80s editing rooms and like how you had all these decks and giant monitors. Monitors were giant tube monitors, boys. They weighed 55 pounds a piece, and they standard definition, video, and like just they're big beefy things, and they look like shit compared to today's simple plasma that I can hold up with one arm and adjust. So much better. But they used to have these huge consoles. So I found a place where their edit bays went out of business, unfortunately. I never like to see that, but this place where he was closing down, he had 9 edit bays, and he's getting rid of a bunch of edit desks, which are 92-inch consoles. So I'm going to have enough for a bunch of these things. So I'm buying 2 of them, these edit desks, and they usually come with a step-up monitor stand. So I'm hoping that I can integrate those. Bye, Josephine. I'm hoping that I can integrate those into, like, shape that into like a background and then a work surface. And part of the idea is I want a space where I have some, I don't have it right here in handy. I have this mixing console for DaVinci Resolve, which I use to cut the show on. And I bought this beautiful console that will actually work with Resolve. It's by Blackmagic. Very expensive, but like about $3,500, and it will actually sit into a tabletop. You can actually set it in, and you can use it to mix. And I thought, well, maybe if I have a couple of those, I can have an edit station, and then I can have, a listening station. I don't know. We'll see how it all works out. I don't know how much space I'm going to have. I know that these shelves are being repurposed for record storage. So I won't have this. Definitely have a monitor of some kind, for sure. That's a must. We got to have the logos and stuff. I got to have the ability to put stuff back there. I think that's a need. But I want space for my turntable. A big long console where I can put my turntable, my record cleaner. I have a big old record cleaner that I'd like to get to use again. Turntable's been in storage for a number of months now, so I haven't had access to that since we decided to sell the house. And then room for these amps to kind of show them off and make them look good. So I've got ideas. It's just a matter of, I'm not sure how it's all going to kind of go together yet. I got to get all the shit in there and then go, we'll move it around, figure it out. So it's going to be good. It's going to be bigger, though. We've got more room. I don't know if it'll be better. We won't have more light. Oh, man. Christopher Ward. Cheers. Cheers, Christopher Ward. Checking in from Germany for once. Cheers. Cheers, Christopher. We cheers everybody. It's new to the channel, coming on the live stream. It's everybody went to Munich, it seems, except me. And I sidestepped it. I was in London. I just had to get home because we were selling this place, and I had other shoots to do and stuff, so I couldn't go to Munich. So I missed it. Kipster Cow says, not that I'm vying for Director's Garage spoilers or anything, but what are your current thoughts on the 007 versus the Carbon, debating between the two? I'll say something. I'll do a spicy take on that. For me, it's the Carbon. I think that the Carbon is... The 007 has bass on a par with the Carbon. Let's see. The 007 has a bass on par with the Carbon, but the Carbon has better technicals. It's a super thin membrane, and it's capable of faster delivery. The big question is, what about the Carbon versus the or the X9000. And that's going to be a part of that X9000 review. I'm going to talk about that then. I enjoyed the 007 is kind of cool. It reminds me of an E-stat version of like the Atrium, because it is a little bit rounded on the upper frequencies, and it kind of handles brighter material in a nice way. So it has that nice ZMF quality to it. While it's not as technically proficient as its, would they be elders or would they be younger? Its younger siblings, like the 009 and the X9000 and the Carbon. It has qualities sonically that are lovely. It's a nice headphone. It's a very good headphone. I've had them out a few times, listening to them in the last week, at night, just checking them out when I had time to listen to anything. Now I'm old and sore, beat up from doing the move. God. Nephilim says, so friends, wanting the Orium to be ready. Still waiting on the Orium to be ready, but in that time he rearranged his mothership rack to create space for it. Oh, that's the tube amp, right? Got my tubes, got backup tubes, and did all the cable runs. He's ready. Well, Nephilim, there's gotta be a way to get pictures up here. I want to see pictures of this stuff. Like, send me the pictures to directorsgarage@gmail.com, and then when you comment, I'll put it up for you. I can put it up on the screen. I have that ability over here to look at stuff. I don't know if I have any media loaded right now. Oh yeah, here's one. Here's my this is cool. Wait, where can I put this? Let's put it here, and then I can go here, and then I can do this. Here's a look at that. There's my with the older tubes. That's when I had the EMLs in it, but that's the version 1 of the Woo Audio WA5LE with a what is that DAC? That is the, I don't know. It was a DAC that did DSD. That's why I bought it. God, it's on the tip of my tongue. I used to have that. Anyway. But yes, I can put photos up like that, and we can actually look at some of your gear if you guys send it to me. directorsgarage@gmail.com. Send them on Wednesday mornings. Not next Wednesday, though. Okay, I'm not going to be here. We're going to be moving. That's great, man. That's great. That's great. Want great sounding 90s album, Genesis We Can't Dance. He loves that album. Underrated as hell. Yeah, and in contrast, if on the right speaker system, Genesis from like 1985, I think it was. It might have been 84. The one with Mama. And it was just, they just titled it, the album was just titled Genesis, and it was kind of a vague album cover. That one was amazing with Home by the Sea on it, and there were some great, phenomenal songs on that record. That's an album to check out. But I also remember on the wrong speakers, on the wrong headphones, it can sound painfully thin. And bright, kind of like the John Cougar stuff from the 80s. It's like I use him as like a reference point for like, this is what you shouldn't have been doing. Whatever John Cougar was doing in the 80s, his records just did not. That Scarecrow album is one of the best pieces of music from the 1980s, and it's one of the worst mastered albums. And they just came out with a remaster that was better. Not perfect, but better. So there you go. Nephilim says, oh, we talked about that. Chat's jumping around on me. Ace of Spades, cheers, buddy. Cheers. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Oh, I got some ice today. Imagine that. Arthur Haywood says a lot of 90s mixes were done first gen digital. That's why a lot of them were bright. Yeah, and I think that's part of it. You know, everyone was recording on Sony tape at that point. They were all using the Sony machines, which were 22 tracks, and you could actually sync at least two of those machines, maybe three of those machines together, and you could jam them with a digital sync cable. and they would stay in perfect alignment and time. And you could then get 44 tracks out of them. And then I think you could even go higher than that and get 66 tracks if you got a third one. But I think you could loop, you could slave, they called it master and slave. You could slave decks off of your master deck and they would just sync. So you'd hit rewind on one and it would send a digital signal to the other one saying, hey, your time code's backing up, and it would just spit and find the time code to match them. And then they'd play in perfect sync, and then you could punch in on any track you wanted if you wanted to do an overdub or something. I used a couple of those tracks. I also used an analog tape decks back then. I got to really get my hands dirty with that stuff because I was fascinated by the machines. And not to call anybody out, certainly nobody who watches this show, but I was on Facebook, and always a dangerous thing. Not as dangerous as Twitter, but still Facebook. And I was talking to a bunch of guys who were like these vintage survivalists. What do they call them? Like digital archaeologists, electronic archaeologists, I guess we would call them. And this guy's one guy's in Canada, and there's another guy down here, and they're like, they rescue these old machines, these old giant 1-inch tape machines that weighed hundreds of pounds. You couldn't pick one up yourself; they were so heavy, but they played nice SD video. And they're like, well, we save these machines, and I go, save them for what? Well, they're amazing machines at doing what? This is a vintage machine, but it has a purpose. It plays music better than any other format I've heard. And the digital gets close, and there are some things that digital is nice. It's actually kind of cool in a way that you have that access immediately to it, and it sounds so good, and you could just call up anything right away and play it. I love that aspect of digital, but there's a beauty to the sound of these machines, and you can't say that about a 40-year-old tape machine, videotape machine. It's like they still look like ass because they are SD. So I'm like, so there's one guy who's like, well, I have a business on the side, and I updub people's tapes and transfer them to digital and whatever. I'm like, okay, but most of the really important stuff is already online. And that was the reason I got rid of my archives, because I have archives of old shows I did back in the 90s and stuff. It's like, well, if it was any good, it's on YouTube by now, right? Or I can stream it somewhere if it was anything worth watching again. And I had a couple of old Springer episodes that I really worked my butt off on, and I saved those things. But I was like, there's no point. Any of the effects that were buried in there that I'd want as maybe an editor reel, if I was ever going to professionally edit again, which I'm not. I can do that all internally on the editing systems now. It's so much easier, and why would I save something from back then when I can do it in HD and it would look beautiful? It's crazy. So that was we really keep going down rabbit holes today, probably keeping the viewers down. Sorry. I'm interested in this stuff. It's fun to talk about. It's fun to talk about all this old stuff, and talk about where we've come, so we don't repeat it ever. I'm like, the day that SD died, I was thanking the video gods. I'm like, I never want to have to thread up a 1-inch machine again. I never want to have to worry. There's technical, you want to talk about technical stuff that nobody will understand. I had to know about horizontal blanking interval, vertical blanking interval. I had to know about color framing. I had to know about sync pulse. I had to know about pulse width. I had to know about the front porch and the back porch. And they had to stay within spec, or PBS wasn't going to accept my program. There was all of this stuff. You had to have a creative side to you as an editor, and then you had to have a lot of technical knowledge as an editor. You had to know how to read a video scope. Can I do that on here? Oh, I want to talk about some new tech today too. I'm finally going to get to talk about the SSD drivers. That's going to come in a minute. Stand by, everybody. Let's just go. Let's see if we can find it. Nope, I went to the wrong thing. What did I do? I need to go to MacBook Pro. There it is. And, okay, so let's look up an SD video signal bars. And let's go to images, because this will be all over this. No. God, you can't even see. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so this is shit you had to know. This is what a video scope would send you back. And you'd have this color burst area in here. You had a front porch, you had a back porch, you had a black level to worry about, and you had to, all of this would come up on a monochrome scope that looked like, well, let's see. This is, no, that's not it. That's bad. That's bad. Don't look at that. Don't pay any attention to that. But it looks like a lot of what your like histogram would look like today, except it was in a different, it was laid out differently. So, you know, you had color bars. Let's see. Let's look at it. Let's see if I can find a Tektronix scope on here. This is kind of, and maybe you guys aren't even interested in this. I don't know. No, not the dictionary, dumbass. Yeah, okay, here we go. Here we go. So this is a, well, this is actually an electronic scope. I'm talking about Tektronix. Let's do video scope. A waveform analyzer. There we go. Nope, still not there. Here we go. This is it. So this is a broken down picture of color bars. That's only one field, but you used to need to know how to zoom in on all this stuff. All these buttons over here that where I'm pointing out with the arrow. You had to know how to work all of this. You had to know how to focus, scale, intensity. You had 2 channels. Then you could pop over to the vector scope by looking at that, and that would tell you this is the luminance information. And then let's see, we can probably call up a vector scope if they didn't put one in here. If I didn't get lucky, I didn't get lucky. Vector scope. Vector scope. And then the vector scope would tell you your color information. There's a vector scope. So this told you the color. So you'd have 2 of these side by side. One would be telling you the luminance information of your video signal, and the other one would be telling you. And this bar right here, you can see this little. There's a little tiny line that's horizontal to this little weird star pattern. Each of these are a color in the video spectrum. And then this little bar is your sync. So that had to, if you cut between machines, that sync had to match. And if it didn't match, you were going to get a bad glitch when you cut between the machines. And then the same thing on the video scopes. You had to have them in perfect color timing or they'd get a little mini shift. And if they weren't in vertical timing, you would get a pitch and roll, a vertical roll in the screen. Video lessons, engineering lessons. Let's see how much my numbers go down. I hope that's interesting. But you had to know all of this stuff, this technical stuff, and you had to know how to work out of problems because stuff would get out of time. It was analog. It drifted. So you'd carry around these little screwdrivers. They were called tweakers. Not like tweakers like tweak, like, but these tiny little flathead screwdrivers, and they'd sit in your pocket. And all the engineers, all the good engineers, had pocket protectors, plastic pocket protectors, because the little clip would wear out the fabric on the pocket from taking them in and out so much. So anyway, you'd wear these pocket protectors, and you have your tweaker, and that's how you knew people were an engineer or not. They'd have the tweaker in their pocket protector in their shirt pocket. They all wore short sleeve button down shirts. That was the style of an engineer. How did we get here? And why are we here? So those were the guys who could like come in if you were in a jam, and they could really figure out what you screwed up yourself, because sometimes it was operator error, or if something drifted, if timing drifted because it was analog. There weren't like crystal clocks locking everything together. It was all analog. You had black signals, master black signals timing everything out. Anyway, digital versus analog. Welcome to it. Michael, have you ever tried any Vioelectric amps? That comes from Last Rhino. No, never have. Never had them. Can't help it. Derek. Hey, Derek. Derek was the guy I was talking to earlier about music in the 90s and stuff. So this is kind of a throwback. It's a throwback episode. I love it. It's fun. Greetings from Poland. How did you come across the Bakun 13R? Where did the idea come from? How do you like it? I love mine. Good to see you. Well, the 13R, the Bakun 13R came to me, and thanks for our chat earlier today, Derek. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The 13R came to me because I was searching forums looking for a headphone amp, not a full-sized amplifier, that would drive the Hifiman Susvara to their full potential. And I talked about this a little bit last week on the live stream. Driving something well doesn't mean producing a sound. These are high efficiency. These will actually, you don't need a monster amp to drive these. And almost, any amp will give you a good tone out of these. But the Susvara, the bass doesn't really activate under lower powered. You can get them to make noise. They'll make sound. They'll produce sound, and it sounds okay. But it doesn't sound spectacular until you put them on an amp that can really push them and give them the power it will take, and it will take any power you throw at them. In order to get the bass to really activate and get those technicals up to their best, so the headphone sounds its best. So when I was looking for an amp, and I'd been through a bunch of them. If you didn't watch the show, like I did the Phonitor X, I had the GSX Mini X, no, I had the GSX Mark II, I had, there's just amp after amp. I had the Ferrum stack. And nothing was driving the Susvara. I felt like they were always leaving something on the table for me to listen to find some new territory. And somebody recommended the Bakun 13R and then the Enlium 23R that came after it as both, and they're both 25 amps. There might be a technical difference between the two buried inside the amp, but from a power standpoint and an ability to drive standpoint, the 13R was every bit the 23R. It's just, different. It's a different version. It's a modern. And then there was a whole bunch of shenanigans that went on at the company itself, so they had to change their name and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the 13R was one of the ones. So I kept a search going across all of my different platforms for any time somebody was trying to sell Bakun 13R or an Enlium. I would have bought that too, I think, if it was there. And sure enough, one popped up, and it was at a good price. And that's how I do things around here. That's how I can afford this show, is I tend to buy things used or make deals, make trades. And not a deal that will screw somebody out of money, but like if somebody is willing to sell something, for less, even though it's used, it's got a couple scratches in it. This thing, the rubber feet on the bottom could use a little refresh. It's not in perfect condition, but it looks very nice, and it's fine with me. I don't care. I'm going to scratch the shit anyway. I don't care if it's brand new. It's going to happen. Stuff happens. Things get nicks in them and dings and little scratches or whatever, and it's just going to happen, period. If you're jumping into the used market, you have to be willing to accept that to save money. And I'm willing to accept that. I don't care if it's got a tiny little nick here or a tiny little ding there. It's like, so what? I would probably put that ding in it myself. It's got some character. As long as it's not disrupting the function of the unit, I don't give a damn. I'm willing to save the money in exchange for getting the product that's used. And so I found a 13R that was just a few $1,000s, This is a $6,000, $7,000 amp when it was new just a couple of years ago, and amp tech doesn't change much. As we've learned, as we've done all these shows, the basics of amp technology haven't changed in, especially solid state stuff, hasn't changed in 20 years. I mean, they've gotten more efficient FETs and things like that can save power, that can be more efficient with the way it does things, but the basics of the amplification circuit is relatively the same as it's been since, 1990. Things just haven't changed much. They're all done the same way. They're just trying different techniques to eke a little better performance out of something. Well, okay. So a 2-year-old, 3-year-old amp, that thing's going to be as good as new, as far as I'm concerned. And sure enough, when I got it here, it drove anything. It drove everything. It drove everything beyond anywhere that I expected. And it was quiet. Like, the thing that I love about the 13R is the dark space. I'll talk about that. It's like you have pinpoints of sound. Like a good headphone will give you a nice image and a good sound stage where stuff comes at you from distances and places in the stage. A good amp will isolate those things, and you hear as you move out of that space where the sound is coming from, it gets really dark. It gets really empty, like there's a nothingness there. And a bad amp will give you a little bit of noise, you can hear some presence there, just some presence, where this thing gets dead dark in those dark spaces. It's amazing sounding. And that's what I mean. It's a very quiet amp. It's so good. So that's why I like this amp. And if I didn't like it, I would have sold it, because I don't have no problem selling things. I have no problem buying things that I don't like eventually, or things that I like initially, and then go, no, after spending some time with it, I'm not as hot on it. And I've done that with a lot of things. It's got me in a lot of hot water with people who take their audio very personally. Whoa, dude, just an opinion. Relax. And my iPhone 3 is 3/4 charged, and I started it just before. That's my that's my niece from 2003. She's still a young kid. Such a cutie. I got her at a wedding. So anyway, that's my 13R story, and I absolutely think it's a spectacular amp, and I've recommended it on the channel to anybody who's looking to pick up a good amp. I'm not selling mine, and that's the best compliment I can give something, is I don't want to get rid of it. I tend to keep the stuff that I really like, which is why the Abyss is still here, and why I didn't bail on the Caldera, and I still have the Atrium, and the Susvara even. It's a great product. I've tried to sell the Susvara. It keeps coming back to me. It's like a freaking boomerang. Got it. Guess it's meant to be here. Nephilim says, you got it, Michael. I will absolutely do that. Bathys Atrium is a made-to-order tube hybrid amp. So good. I mean, you said tube hybrid amp. It's so cool. It's just cool, man. Once it comes in, it'll forward me pics. I want to see it. Yeah, I'll show it off on the show. Absolutely. So cool. Very jealous, Nephilim. The amp that I'm dying to get, and I'm kind of mad at them about, I'm going to call out headphones.com right now. I'm going to give them a plug by name, headphones.com. I have an allegiance to Audio 46, but headphones.com is the only US distributor of what many people saw in Munich, which was the Zal HM1 amplifier. And today I got another notice. They posted another video about the damn Zal HM1, an interview with the designer, and you can't buy it. It's been sold out. They're sold out through 2023. They haven't started selling their 2024 stock yet. And I'm like, why do you keep giving me these videos of this amazing sounding amplifier that I can't put an order in on? Because that's an amp that I would love to get in here and listen to. Because I think it would give, it's a that amp has a different technical approach to it than the Bakun. The Bakun has all 25 watts on hand constantly. Do I have that right, or do I have it backwards? Yes, I have that right. And when you open the pot, it's just letting sound through. The Zal produces the power as it needs it, and it gives it more. I think I'm saying that the right way. I'm gonna put a check mark. I got to go back and look at that, and I may be saying that backwards. But one of them has the power on hand all the time. The other one ramps up the power as you turn up the volume knob, and it keeps the amp quieter. I think that's why the Zal. I think that's the Zal. It makes the amp more usable at lower volumes, and it keeps the noise down on the amp. But that intrigues me, and I want to hear that. I want to hear that in person. I want to experience it, and I want to buy the amp for my pleasure. Nobody's sold these things yet because they're so good. Nobody's getting rid of them on the used market. I've had my little, apps and sniffers out there telling me, let me know. Let me know when one comes up, so I can get in the game on it. And I also, the other piece of gear which I've made no mystery about is I want to get the time piece, the time component of that DCS, which is another $7,000, $8,000. All good. I just want to hear what it sounds like. Maybe I'll sell it when I get it, but I want to hear it. I want to hear it in the system, as it were, because the DAC is phenomenal. I'm not disappointed with that DAC at all. Everybody said I had a bunch of people in the comments say, "Oh, you're going to be sorry with that DAC." I'm like, I'm not sorry about that DAC. I think the DAC sounds great. It's like a lot of what the Cord did, but it takes the edge off, it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful DAC. Anyway, and it streams native DSD and streams native the bad thing that nobody likes. You know what it is. Keep going. Guys, we're getting punchy. It's been an hour. Ace of Spades says old school blues is one of his favorite genres. Oh yeah, but the quality but the recording and quality was terrible. Hi-fi systems really show off their shortcomings. Well, old blues was cut direct to the lacquer. Like Robert Johnson didn't sing into a tape recorder. He was most of the time they were cutting the record as he was singing. So, and then they duplicated the record, the master lacquer. So that's the way those old recordings are. And they didn't have like the high-end cutting machines like they had back then. There's a nostalgic factor that's good to them. And some companies have gone through and remastered that stuff. There was a complete Robert Johnson recordings series that came out, and it was noisy. It had the stuff, but it had some age to it, but it sounded pretty good. And I was pretty impressed with it. I actually enjoyed that. I had that whole CD set back when we used to listen to CDs. Do you remember CDs, boys? Anybody remember CDs? I threw out a bunch of more CDs I found along the way too. I have no need for CDs when I can download anything I want right into my computer and it plays it back and it's got more bits. So terrible. God, we all bought those discs and those disc players. And how many disc players have you bought over the years? I've had dozens. I threw out a 5 CD changer, a Sony turntable. So this is a turntable with 5 different CD positions in it. And you could load up 5 CDs and listen to music all night long. It would just rotate around the carousel like a jukebox. Piece of garbage. Why?
You'll need to continue on your...
I don't need to do anything. That was Siri chiming in, telling me what I was up against. Yeah, so it's really amazing. but I love the old blues. And once you get into the 50s, some of those guys did re-record some of that stuff. Muddy Waters has some great recordings that he did. Obviously was it not the real folk blues? And he redid stuff later in his career. It sounded great at Chess. Mickey Dare. Cheers, Mickey. Welcome to the show. Have you thought about trying 8-track? It's supposed to be even better than reel-to-reel. I can tell you from personal experience, there is nothing good about 8-track. And I'll tell you why. Let's see. How can I do this? This is about a 1/4 inch. A tape is a 1/4 inch across, right? And they split that tape in half. Half of that 1/4 inch has the information on the left for the left channel, and the other half of that tape has the information for the right channel. And they run it by the heads on a good player at 15 inches per second, which is a pretty good clip. They can go up to 30, but the duration of the tape starts shrinking down pretty fast. So you're doing that at 15 inches per second, and you can fit roughly an album side on one spool of tape. An 8-track takes that same 1/4 inch and divides all the music to, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yes. You have 8 little snippets of that same 1/4 inch width tape, taking left, right, left, right, left, right, and left, right. So an 8-track tape has 4 channels of stereo music. Follow me? Left, right, channel 1, track 1. Left, right, track 2. Left, right, track 3. Left, right, track 4. And all of that's fitting onto a single 1/4 inch tape. There's just not enough real estate on an 8-track 1/4 inch tape for playback to get enough information on there for high fidelity. So we used to use, back in the day, cart machines. Now, cart machines would take the 1/4 inch tape and split it down the middle as my reel-to-reel does back there. So you have a left channel and a right channel. They didn't have multiple tracks. They didn't have 4 tracks of 2 channels each. They had just 1 track of 2 channels. So you were using the entire tape. However, the noise of the cassette itself that you would put into the cart machine it self-generated a lot of noise, and it wouldn't stay nicely against the heads. You had a lot of whoa and flutter in those things. It wasn't a great situation. So even the cart machines couldn't rival the true reel-to-reels. We used to play back reel-to-reels on the air back in high school. I used to do that all the time. We had 3 reel-to-reel decks, and we had a whole wall of reel-to-reel tapes. So you could go into the archives, and our hot stuff was listed on was carted up, and you could play it back. But it was analog radio back then. It sounded like shit anyway. It's back at 88.1 on your dial. WHSD Hinsdale. Too funny. Ken Workshop, have you ever catch the Jerry Springer This American Life? Covers the time in Ohio before he was in TV doing politics. No, I haven't seen it, but I'm well aware of I know his history because I worked with the man for 8 years. So we all know, I know everything about him, from the good to the bad. And the nice thing is that Jerry had a good heart. We just passed 1 month since my old boss, Jerry Springer, passed away. He was a very good boss, a very kind man, a very good man. I've cared about everybody. Really a good guy. Had his share of personal flaws, but everybody does. We're all screwed up. Mine is this stuff. So good. Nephilim, got a favorite album yet for both the Caldera and the Stax 9000? Love to hear what has pleased you the most sonically on those headphones. Well, certainly jazz. I would go to jazz. I would go to probably Bill Evans on the Stax. That was pretty magical. Bill Evans, Waltz for Debbie, and Live at the Village Vanguard, which Waltz for Debbie came off of. Those sessions, those have been good. I haven't spent a ton of time with the X9000. I've had some time, but honestly, the majority of my time off the air and away from the show has been spent not listening to music. In fact, last night I missed music so much I had Alexa play. My Alexa, what do they call it? The Amazon Echo thingy? Oh, it's responding to me because I said something. Playing, it was playing The Clash last night. It was jamming The Clash back in the director's garage while I was boxing up stuff because I'm just so sore. I just haven't had time to do a lot of listening. But I would say, yeah, that would be my first recommendation. That Waltz for Debbie, I was listening to on Reel to Reel, phenomenal. All really good stuff. Fantastic. Kent Doty says, don't forget the engineer's slide rule in a case attached to a belt. Damn straight, man. I remember those things too. My late father used to have a slide rule, and he tried to explain to me how to use it. I'm like, Dad, I got Texas Instruments. What do I need that for? Too fun. 25 watts at 8 ohms. Yeah, it's got a punch. It's got a punch. Yeah, it's really these are good, pretty good amps we're getting into, and they're all at the $7,000-8,000 level. I mean, you're getting into some pretty rare air up there. You can get higher, but and again, there were a lot of guys with the Susvara, by the way, that were using speaker amps to drive them, and I have a gorgeous Krell speaker amp, 100 watts aside, that would probably do pretty good with the Susvara, but you also risk some sort of energy spike frying out the Susvara, and I'm not willing to do that with a $6,000 headphone. The show's not built like that. If we get to 150,000 subscribers, boys, like and subscribe this episode, by the way, if you're enjoying these rat holes we are consistently going down. If we get to 150,000 subscribers, then I can start doing experiments like that, and I'll bring in my Krell amp and see if it'll drive this as far, because I can afford to lose it at that point. The channel's making serious money. Right now, I'm losing money on the channel. So there you go. Like and subscribe. That's the rule. Yeah, so maybe think of variable gain on the 13-hour. One of them has variable gain and one of them has constant gain. And there were two different approaches. That's what I remember about it. I read about this and I just I think I've got them transposed, but I can't remember. Sorry, boys. It happens sometimes. Your director's doing a lot of things right now, like trying to pay for a new house. Hipster Cow says, one thing for sure about the Zal, you are easily going to make your money back if it comes time to sell. Yeah, I mean, that thing's not going to, there's just not enough of them. There's a scarcity in that, and everybody wants them. So, I got a problem at work. I'm going to have to go soon. Yeah, there's a scarcity. Anytime you have scarcity, you're going to have price increases. So there you go. And it works that way. It works that way with anything. For years, remember Harley-Davidson motorcycles? For years, you were paying over sticker for Harley-Davidsons because they couldn't produce them fast enough for you for the people who wanted them. So there was a constant drought. There was a constant shortage of Harley-Davidsons in the country, and they made a lot of money off of them. And then they eventually caught up, and the price went down. There you go. Supply and demand, folks. Did I mention, side note, I minored in economics, macroeconomics, the big picture stuff. So yes, I'm all about supply and demand and all that stuff. I used to be able to do graph curves and all that stuff. Show you what a tariff does on a graph. To prices. Ace of Spades says, aside from the Zal, you should have also watched for the Traformic Primavera or Riviera AIC-10. I've heard of the Riviera. I have not heard of the Traformatic. They rarely come up on the market, but I've heard of the Riviera, and people have recommended that amp to me. So yes, that's something. The Zal just intrigues me because I've seen a lot of people playing with it. I'm like, I want to play with it too. I'm such a child. Good point on the massive jump in recording quality once you get to the 50s and later on. Yeah, and honestly, like when you get into the 50s, the quality of classical music gets really good, and there are some of the best classical. It's very crass classical. Some of the greatest classical recordings in history were done in the 1950s. London Records used to have a series called the Blueback. If you find London Blueback records, buy them. They're very good quality. And then you get into the 60s and the living stereo stuff. And some of those may be even back in the 50s. I can't remember the exact dates of them, but the living stereo stuff, phenomenal recordings from back in the day. All those old St. Frank Sinatra records sound fabulous, fabulous. They learned how to do recordings. And it got better and better over time, of course, because things do. Last few, then we're going to call it a day, boys. I'm so glad I got a chance to stop by today. I won't be on next week. I'm going to repeat some of the stuff from the top of the show. I will not be on next week because that is our closing day on the new house, and we're going to be moving. I will be lucky if I'm on live stream the week after that. As soon as I get something up and set up, I'll do a live stream just to say hey and show you the progress on the new place and where we're going to be located. The next episode, which is the D8000 episode, that's very close. I've about 3/4 of the way through it. I need about a night to work on it. I've got a lot of the graphics done for it, but I haven't done the B-roll with the slow motion fancy video stuff. I've got to cover my edits, as they say in the business. So I have to do that, and then that show will go live probably Friday, guessing, but it will be this week for sure. Riviera makes some truly fantastic sounding amps. Yes, I've heard that. Similar recording quality jump with old jazz in the 50s. Yes, Timothy Egan for the win. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that stuff was just phenomenal. It's the Miles stuff from the 50s. And Kind of Blue is what, 60? Was that 62 or was that 50? What year was Kind of Blue? Stand by, boys. Doing some research. If only there was a device that could tell me, house the world's information at my fingertips that nobody ever uses. Instead spouts off stuff that they think they remember instead of what actually happened. Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. Year was 59. Yeah, 59. 59, one of the greatest recordings in music history recorded. How about that? So there you go. And it, you know, that's where we came. And the microphones were there. The microphone quality was there. The U47, which is the microphone used all through the 60s and 50s by the likes of the Beatles and Frank Sinatra and all those singers used the U47. That was, I think that came out in like the late 40s. So probably 1947. That's the way they tended to do things back then. Classic tube mic. Great sounding, phenomenal sounding. And if you find a good one today and it's under 25,000, buy it, because you can resell that thing for 40 right now. Not kidding. A mint quality U47 is a $40,000 microphone. Welcome to 2023 and inflation. Appreciation. All those Asian words. Nephilim says, I'm a guy who still loves CDs. I have a Cyrus CD with intelligent power supply. Absolutely adore it. He has been an incredible Burr Brown 32 multi-put DAC that is actually amazing. I believe that. I just am like, I don't have a need for it. Digital is digital. And I can see the argument for SACD. But regular CDs, I'm like, I can play that file anywhere. And as long as I have a good DAC, I'm going to be covered, you know. Dual chassis, Kevin Gilmore CFA3 custom built for his Susvara. Dual chassis, Kevin Gilmore. Oh, that's got to be an amp, right? So I really liked seeing your custom electrostatic. Well, the electrostatic, I don't know how custom it was. I didn't build it myself. I wish I had. It would be fun. That'd be a project for someday. I like the minor electronics. That's fun. Happy closing day coming up, Gary. Thank you. Thank you. We'll have to make sure we have all the money in place and then get the stuff out of here. Michael, I have covered the fact that Zeos now shows his face. Big audio news. Adnan, yes, that was covered earlier in the show. I talked briefly about it. I'm glad that he got the camera off his head. It was making me nauseous. It was hard to watch his show, and he still put up a 3-hour video touring the Zurich show, which should have been split up. Not to critique anybody else. I'm not fantastic. I do screwed up things myself. But, yeah, there was he put up a 3-hour video. I'm like, who's going to watch that? Nobody should torture anybody into watching 3 hours worth of video. But, you know, congrats to him. I'm glad he's showing his face now. And I'm sure his 250,000 subscribers... So jealous, boys. So jealous. Appreciate it. If only I was as clever. Okay. Good luck with the move director. Oh, one thing I wanted to show off. We were talking about new technology. And I've been threatening to do this for weeks. But I actually went through the motions and set it up today. So we're going to go back to it. Back to the laptop. And no, we're not going to do more vector scopes. Microphone, behave. But I did want to show off this stuff. If you guys have not heard of this, there's a company called XMEMS. And they are doing solid state fidelity. What does that mean? Well, these are drivers for IEMs that are solid state. So a solid state driver... in theory, would have no moving parts. This does have a moving diaphragm. It's made out of silicone. But they're saying that silicone responds so quickly, it will be faster than your typical balanced armature or dynamic driver module. It doesn't say if it's faster than an E-stat, an in-ear E-stat speaker, like the Shure, that's so fast but so baseless. Very, very interesting, and they show some of the stiffness qualities of the silicone they're using as opposed to titanium, aluminum, plastic, all the different things that people make their drivers out of now. And they talk about stiffness, and then diamond, of course, is crazy. So they're making something that's 40% stiffer than most of the other, and you should get better speed out of it. That's the point of it. And very, very interesting technology. This is new, and you're going to be seeing these coming to an IEM near you. And I think the first place you're going to see it probably is in the Bluetooth stuff. So they're saying that the resolution quality is up there, and it's going to be something to see. So I can't wait to hear some demos of this stuff. And you know that companies like Noble are going to be playing with it, and they're saying the clarity is exceptional. So they've eliminated the moving driver aspect of the drivers. So you have solid state drivers. It's a company called XMEMS, and I have not seen any actual product from XMEMS. So interesting new tech, and I wanted to put it on your radar. What do they call it? My service, my little duty, little good act of goodwill toward all men, enlightening the world to XMEMS, if you haven't heard of them already. Some folks had mentioned them to me, and I had tried to remember them in a previous episode, but I didn't have the computer ready. So I did that for this one, so you could see, you could check that out. So yes, look up XMEMS. You can Google it. You can read all the read about all the tech yourself. But it will change our IEM soon, and certainly it will the Bluetooth. The Bluetooth stuff, I think, is where you're first going to see it, because it's going to make it lighter, it's going to make it smaller, it's going to, you know, it'll have the advantages, and you can put a bigger battery into a Bluetooth IEM, then it just clears up space for other things. So good news, new technology on the way. I haven't heard it though, and somebody down here has heard it. Hipster Cow listened to MEMS at CanJam SoCal last year, needed vast tuning improvements, but it was a step up in terms of detail to any IEM. There you go, and hopefully we'll get like a Viking X-Men from Noble. I'm gonna get my buddy John Moulton on the phone and say, hey, gotta play with this, man. You gotta, what can Noble do with this? I just like their IEMs. I'm a fanboy. Uri says, Michael, everyone. Hi, Michael, everyone. Wondering if I heard the AudioQuest Nighthawks? No. The Campfire Audio Cascade? No. And if yes, what kind of music do they most suit? I don't know. I haven't heard them. I have not had time to listen to much of anything beyond what's in-house right now. And I'm trying to get this D8000 episode out the door. I was hoping to have it out early in the week, but work got in the way, as it so often does. Greetings from Germany, Don Grizzle Schnizzle. Cheers, buddy. Lot of Germany in the house today. Man, it's awesome. Stupid power, about 16 watts into 16 ohms. It's Kevin Gilmore CFA 3 amp. Yes, I have the GHS S8, whatever, the Alphabet amp. He built the same Kevin Gilmore CFA 3 amp. Great amp, stupid power, 16 into 60 ohms. It's the same designer as the KGS SHV, from what I understand. Yes and no. The basis of the KGS is a Kevin Gilmore design. It's the KGS part, or KG part of that run of letters. The SS is solid state, telling you it's solid state. The HV I can't remember, but it was a guy named Berger with Mullner who took it to what they're calling the KGS-SHV Carbon and the Carbon CC, which he told me was the 9th or so iteration, like minor upgrade to this amp. But he did all sorts of things like putting point-to-point wiring in these things. He put carbon FETs in them. And really tweak the performance of that original KGSS amp that Kevin Gilmore designed. Kevin also did a lot of work up here on the Blue Hawaii SE. Some of his design found its way into that. And somebody sent me some more information about that the other day. I want to thank them for it, but I haven't absorbed it yet. I just took it in. Don says, loved my show for a couple of months now. All great to fall asleep. If I'm putting you guys to sleep. I'll talk in a grittier voice, make it harder to fall asleep. Who's this idiot talking on the YouTubes? ET story suggestion, Telluride Bluegrass 50th anniversary. I don't think you're watching the right show. Is Britney Spears going to be there? But Telluride, I went to Telluride last summer. I was up there. Fantastic time. I love that town. I had a great time. Took the gondola over the mountain. Oh, so great. Such a nice town. Fantastic. Gil Renard says, what do they say about pure bro? Isn't that what they said about pure bro? Yeah, there's always something better, right? Pure beryllium drivers. Yes. That was the, what is that? That was the, well, the original Focal Utopia was all beryllium. And then so was the ZMF Verite was a beryllium driver. And they've all been surpassed. Look, the Caldera is just of course, there's a different technology too. Anyway, thinking to myself, we're getting a little long in the tooth here on this episode. I'm going to start wrapping it up. Talked about Hipster Cow. Yes. Don Grizzle has got to go listening to Rose Lauren's Africa and Aria. So, yeah, go listen, buddy. Speaking of D8000, you have a recommendation. Do you recommend the A8000, Michael? I haven't heard him. I just got my final audio. My final audio first listen was this D8000 Pro, and I enjoy them. I think they're great. I don't think they're the best thing ever, but I think they're really great. And I'm a fan. I'm going to start the goodbye music. Outro, play. Missed some of you guys today. I hope I'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks. Again, sorry it was an earlier show today. I had to do it earlier because I got things going on around here. I got some work to finish up, and I've got some boxes to pack. All of those cables that I cleaned up last night are now sitting in one big bin, and they need to be cleaned, and I need to throw out more. I've got to figure out what I've got here. So, and Nephilim recommends the original D8000. Yes, I can't wait to get that episode out. I think some of you will be pleased, and I think some of you will be a little surprised. But to me, there's good and bad in that headphone. I think there's some good things, and I think there's some stuff I'm not so fond of over time. But it's an overall winning sound. Enjoy them. You'll see in the video. Why am I even bothering? Hey guys, thank you for stopping by today. Tip your waiters and waitresses on their way out of the pub, and I will definitely see you, well, before you know it. It's just going to be 2 weeks before we're live again, guys, so cheers. Have a great day. Have a great day. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Good to see all of you. Thanks for participating, and yeah, we'll see you before you know it. Later. The challenges of getting off the air.